Sorry. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Krista Wales. Of those of you who don't already know me, I am a member of the Council Board of Community Living Ontario, and I work in Walkerton. Welcome to the Together with Families, supporting the strength of family leadership and leadership and family session. Our speaker this afternoon is Janet Keys. We hope you enjoy this session and hope that the information presented will continue to support you and build your knowledge and understanding. Thank you.
Hello, I'm not Janet, I'm Alan McGilvery, and I'm grateful to be here with Durham Resources and Support. We're here from Oshawa. We represent the Durham Region, working with families, with individuals, and we're just looking for different ideas, different ways of doing things, and I'm just grateful to be here for this conference. And we've learned so much already this morning. And I turn it over to Janet.
This is a trick question. I really am Janet, so. Great, thanks, Alan. So we're a combination of families and staff who partner together in all kinds of ways, and we'll kind of get to that over the session we're having. We've tried to kind of put something together that's kind of interesting and dynamic. You'll notice the couch out the front. You're going to have to hang on to see how we're going to use that. But we're kind of looking forward to the hour and a bit we have together. There is a handout here. If people miss that, they can get it at the front. We also have a few copies of our newsletter, and if you missed that or if you'd like to be on our newsletter sign up mailing list, you can do that here at the front as well. Okay. So, today we're going to talk about families and family leadership and what supports that to unfold. And I'm going to start by just giving you some images to think about, and hopefully these are tantalizing bits of real stories, some of which you will hear a little bit later on. But while I'm going through each of these scenarios, I want you to think about, what is family leadership? So when Tracy, I don't think we did names. There's Tracy and Alan, Sandy, Melissa, who is a facilitator with us, and Selena, who's a manager of family support. So when Tracy goes to the internet and researches for some answers, when her son's doctors say, I don't know anymore, and she finds an important diagnosis with some helpful treatments that convince the doctors. And then she shares the process of doing the research and convincing the doctors and making some real strides in her son's life, and she shares that story with other families. Is this family leadership? When Alan joins the Imagining Home housing group that we have with other families, and together they talk and learn and conclude that actually the crisis in housing is not a disability issue, that housing is in fact a community issue. Is this family leadership? When Sandy listens in on 3 months or so of other families talking to each other about their stories of ideas of housing and what could be possible, stories where really they're each talking about what's in their own control, what resources and assets do their families know, hold, or have access to. And then within another 3 months, she and her husband choose to sell and downsize and offer both a separate apartment for their son and some resources to realize a Florida dream. So is this family leadership? Is it leadership when she then shares this story and particularly focuses on how powerful it is for their son to have his own place and more a life of his own, and this inspires other families? Is it leadership when she understands that something that's called a portable housing benefit, a little extra money to top off your rent if you don't earn very much, that would come to you every month forever, regardless of where you lived. That's called a portable housing benefit. When she understands that that would make this housing arrangement that they thought about for their son sustainable and long-term, and in fact could mean if their son decided to move into another kind of housing situation, the dollars would follow him. When she understood how powerful that could be for his future, and she moves on to advocate with other families for more portable housing benefits, and speaks to the regional budget committee and council in other places. Is that family leadership? Or is it family leadership when that advocacy is successful, so that 2 months ago, Durham Region announced 70 portable housing benefits that benefit all people in Durham Region. 10 of those specifically for families or people with a developmental disability, right? So is that family leadership only when it works out? Is it leadership when Sandy and her family use resources differently so their son leaves his day program to explore and follow a fuller life in his own community? When Tracy and Alan contemplate housing options that are outside of the box of what is typically thought about for young people who can be complex to support, but their options are based determinedly on what is typical individual and still within their means, rather than for asking for full services. Is this family leadership? What about when Tracy joins the design committee for our Recognizing Capacity as Supports for Decision-Making pilot project, and specifically because she's getting better and better at listening to her son's voice and his real determination to be part of the planning for his own future? What about when the smaller housing group that Sandy joins to look at a future inclusive housing development, when that group decides to incorporate, because they think that they would be a more organized and listened to voice so that developers and governments would take them more seriously? Is that family leadership? Or how about when Alan goes bike riding with their son in order to show the new team members what his son likes, what he can do, and how he shows both enjoyment and I've had enough? Such detailed attention to the things that matter and making sure they are passed along. Is this family leadership? And finally, it is family leadership whenever Tracy, Alan, Sandy, and so many others show all of us the way with their family stories, their new ideas, their demonstration of the many, many ways that family members contribute to and deeply appreciate their families, neighborhoods, and communities. Because at Durham Family Resources, these are our guiding lights. These give us all inspiration, tell us what's needed, how we can help. And also this tells us how and when to get out of the way. To us, this indeed, and all of it, is family leadership. Okay? So who are we? Just really, here we are. If you're kind of new to the area, this is a special map for Nick here. This is Southern Ontario. You're way up north right now, but so at Durham Family Resources, we like to call ourselves a family support and resource organization. And really, we partner together with families to imagine, plan, implement, and build, paying attention to building good, valued, contributing lives in real community, one person at a time. And we are family-led, anchored in SRV principles, looking at one person at a time, and always checking out for real, authentic experiences rather than pretend. We're a little bit different than many, many other organizations within CLO in that we offer no services or programs where a person with a disability checks in at the door and the family walks away. Where there is funding for support, we might help to manage the funds, but we don't hold the funds. We have no control over the funds. All support people work directly for the family. We partner together to take steps forward on connections, belonging, and relationship for people. In the end, it's always that's important to people. On what is home and where can be a home of my own. On helping people take on meaningful, valued roles through which they contribute to and connect with various parts of their community. And on whatever the life paths of any family at that point demand. So as we go forward, just want to pay attention to three things, or we keep three things in mind all of the time. For us, the word family means the individual in the context of their family. where we see that the families, when they are well supported, they are able to listen well to the voice of their family member with a disability, allow that voice to come through, and in fact augment that voice. So that's really important. So when you hear family, we're really talking about the whole family, with the individual as a focus. The other thing we talk a lot about is a set of principles. Now, don't worry, we're not going to go through this. I just want to say it really is there. It is in writing. It's kind of all mushed up because it's so hard to put on one page. When you speak in ordinary language, using ordinary words, you have to use a lot more words than you use if you use jargon. Anyways, we do this because we honestly believe through our experience and the experiences of families that some paths that families are offered will never lead to a real life with the good things in life that families deeply want and need for their family members with a disability within their community, right? That not all paths lead to the same place, so not all choices are equal. And it's important to know this because families actually don't want to waste time or energy. They need to know where to put their resources and their focus, and where are the places of hope. So we kind of keep that front and center whenever we're talking about things. And families always end up, wanting real home, ways to make their contribution, and enough mutual and enriching relationships with depth and safeguarding. And the third thing is, I just want to emphasize that we partner with and support families in the ways that they tell us are important. And some of the ways we do this allows a degree of family leadership to arise. We are not responsible for the family leadership that arises within the families connected with us, but much of what we've done is allowing that to come forth, and sometimes it's helping things out, and sometimes it's not standing in the way. We know, however, over the years that when we support families well, the leadership among families always arises. Selena?
So each of you is here today because family leadership means something to you. It is near and dear to your heart. And you'll come to know a little bit about our organization, and that one of the things that we think is fundamentally important is listening deeply to families and to community members. And so now we want to hear from you. So we'd like you to take maybe 5 minutes with 3 or 4 others that are sitting close to you, and we'd like to know, what does the term family leadership mean to you? And why is family leadership important? So, turn to each other, have a brief conversation. You can move your chairs. And for those participating online, please jot down your thoughts. Okay, maybe we can come back together now as a group. We'd like to come back together now and share our ideas as a group. I might try the clap once if you hear me. Clap 2 times if you hear me. Clap 3 times if you're awake. So Alan's going to come around with the microphone, and we'd like to start with, what does the term family leadership mean to you? So you can just raise up your hand, wave if you have something to say. He's going to come to you anyway. So what does the term family leadership mean to you? What did you discuss in your group?
It means working together.
Excellent. Absolutely. It does mean working together, collaboratively. Other thoughts? What does the term family leadership mean to you? There was lots of chatter.
I think it's like kind of like a sense of belonging, having people you can trust and turn to when you need help, people who have your best interests and needs at heart.
Thank you. From this side of the room?
We talked about families and agencies walking alongside each other in order to provide the best possible services and supports.
That's right. Thank you. Yeah, walking alongside is important. Meeting families where they're at. Yes.
We were talking a little bit about empowerment and empowering each other and helping build each other up and nurturing skills for leadership so people can have a voice.
Yes, building each other up is important, and when we speak to each other and we see each other in each other, we can do that. Sherry.
I didn't get a chance to say this in my group, but what I was going to say is respecting family cultural values and listening. So allowing that leadership to emerge, and it's sometimes quiet and you have to listen.
Absolutely. Deep listening is very important, and I love that you're bringing out respecting family cultural values, because we are very diverse and we do need to take a step back and listen to that. And so, why is family leadership important?
Well, you can go.
Okay, so for the last one, you know, going on how she was saying about quiet, we also have to be, I think, observant, because, you know, sometimes it's not always said, but as a family, you know, if we can watch each other and pick up on, oh, they're sad today, or they're this, or you know, or there's that. And why it's so important is because I think it just makes everybody's life so much, it enhances everybody's life so much better.
Yeah, so being watchful and mindful and an observer, it's really important. Other thoughts about why family leadership is important? I have a couple of ideas. Oh, and ideas, they're better from the audience.
I think family leadership is important because it's the glue that holds the family together.
Definitely, yes. And on this side of the room?
Because every individual should make their own choice, and what better people to help them than their family and or their friends.
Definitely. Family tends to know family best. Yeah. Other ideas before we move along? Something burning? Yes?
Just from a service provider perspective, organizations are usually, struggling with so many different pressures and compliance and all kinds of dumb stuff that we have to deal with. The family's always there and they're consistent. And I mean, staff can come and go, organizational directions can change, but the family is there. So the more active and involved they are, the safer that person is and more likely to have a good life.
Definitely, family is what's natural. Yeah. So with that in mind, we do have families here that are open and would like to share their stories with you. So I'd like to call up Sandy, who will speak to her journey.
Thank you, Selena. Hello, my name is Sandy Charlarello, and my son Bobby is 28 years old. Our housing journey began when he turned 18. At least in our minds, it did. At that age, we felt we better start to make plans for where he would live. What was an appropriate solution? Independent living, assisted living, group home. What was best for him? As years went on, we knew complete independent living was going to be a challenge. So approximately 4 years ago, two things happened. First, I heard about a housing group that consisted of parents like me that were looking for solutions called Imagining Home. Second, a chance conversation with family gave us hope that there were options for Bobby. A cousin of my husband is a reputable builder in the local area, and he expressed interest in possibly building something that would provide the type of housing we were looking for. I immediately arranged for him to meet with two of the housing advocates at DFR. Now, back to Bobby. 4 winters ago, we had a family vacation in Florida to escape the cold winter. We were fortunate to stay in a condo townhouse and really relax for the week. But that gave us the bug. We want to be snowbirds when we retire. So to fulfill that goal, we would really need to start saving, but most important, create safe housing for Bobby. From attending the Imagining Home meetings, I heard a very wise person say, and I do paraphrase, decide on the housing option you want and let the supports fall in place. So within a month of that trip, we had our house on the market and began our search for housing that would benefit us all. Now, Bobby likes his alone time, is not keen on roommates. However, his housing solution would need to be a 2-bedroom option to allow a support worker to stay overnight. It didn't make sense for us to stay in the home we were in without him, so we decided to downsize to our retirement home, which is a bungalow with a self-contained basement apartment, complete with separate entrance. We live upstairs, and Bobby lives downstairs. He has all the space he needs and then some. In the past 3 years, we have seen Bobby develop more independence, do things we knew he could do but hadn't shown us, including laundry, preparing his own breakfast and lunch, and even some light housekeeping. Bobby is thriving in his own space. So in closing, our story, which really was a leap of faith, was possible because a number of supports to which we were introduced. This includes the Imagining Home Housing Group, which led to the smaller group called Durham Intentionally Built Communities. We now are fortunate to receive support funding and having attended DFR's Making the Most 12-week family learning series was a great asset in our endeavor to ensure he has a fulfilling life within our community. The new portable housing benefit that we are going to receive will also ensure that his living solution is sustainable. New this fall, I will be part of another group, a family group that meets monthly. Our future is certainly looking bright.
Thank you, Sandy. Now I'd like to call on Tracy and Alan, who too have been very active and will share their family journey.
Good afternoon. This is my wife, Tracy, and this is our story. We've been blessed with 2 amazing sons. Our oldest, Andy, is 25. He brings such joy to us all. He's very helpful. He has an incredible way of cheering everyone up. Wherever he goes, he's very creative, and we are also very grateful for his enduring spirit. Our youngest son, TJ, is 24. He has also brought us much joy. He has a contagious smile that everyone is attracted to, And his greatest gift to us has been to challenge our way of thinking about absolutely everything we thought we knew. TJ was diagnosed at 2 with autism. He was always quite a puzzle to his doctors, teachers, and yes, even our own family. Since he's non-speaking, it was very difficult to figure things out. He does use a communication device, which helps, but he still can become frustrated at times. Early on, we discovered that TJ would never quite fit into, or never did quite fit into any of your typical programs or places. He was super hyper, and he never sat still for too long. He was constantly moving and climbing.
When TJ started school, it was incredibly challenging for him. He wasn't interested in circle time, story time, or craft time. In fact, the only thing he was interested in was home time. It wasn't long before our doctor suggested some medication to calm TJ down. We weren't Googling very much 20 years ago. We still just took the advice of our doctors. And unfortunately, the start of the medication, we began on a very difficult path. For a week or so after starting medication, TJ initially settled down, but that didn't last long. And within a few weeks, things would drastically change for him. Things became much worse, and the doctors insisted that sometimes these medications would take 6 to 8 weeks to really work well, so we would continue on. When that didn't work, the dose would increase. And then when that didn't work, other medications were added. And, you know, it didn't take long before TJ was very agitated, very anxious. That beautiful smile that would just brighten our days wasn't seen much anymore. In fact, all of his emotions began to fade away. Over the next couple of years, we did try to take him off medications, but the withdrawals were unbearable, and the doctors were telling us that we just hadn't found the right one yet. What we were really seeing was just autism. It seemed like every time that TJ started a new medication, a new label was added to him. TJ went from doctor to doctor and from school to school. He seemed to be trapped in this horror of medication, chaos, and autism. Things were very complicated, to say the least, and little by little, our hope began to fade.
When puberty came along, things became even worse for TJ. He began having seizures at the age of 13. Once again, we found ourselves dealing with more medications, but the seizures continued, and so did his agitation and fits of rage. By 16, we were wondering who our son was. Where was that happy, bouncy boy? We couldn't bear to see him suffering anymore. We thought throughout this time, we had spent many nights on our knees in prayer. One day, we just decided to take him off all medication. We were determined that God had a plan and a purpose for TJ's life, even though it wasn't obvious to anyone else yet or those around him.
Well, our decision wasn't that popular with most of TJ's doctors, at first anyway. We began to very slowly decrease his medications. We would go through withdrawal for about 7 to 10 days, and then he would slowly stabilize. We would wait another week or 2, or sometimes 3, and then do it all over again. What we thought would take about 6 months to a year ended up taking us well over 4 years. This was an incredibly difficult time for all of us, especially TJ. He'd been so strong through the whole process. But little by little, with the decrease, TJ began to understand things much better. Things were clearer for him. He was able to follow simple instructions now and was learning more and more every day. From week to week, we were discovering that our son was in there. He was intelligent. He began to communicate more and more. He had likes and dislikes and even a sense of humor. Discovering TJ was incredible to us. The doctors also began to see that TJ simply couldn't tolerate these medications and agreed that stopping them was the best option for him.
His anxiety levels became much higher, though, when he started school. to the point where we just hated to send him. TJ didn't want to be there, and the school system was unable to meet his needs. We kept asking ourselves, why are we sending him? It was at this time that DFR really came alongside our family. They helped us think more deeply about what TJ needed and what a good life may look like for him outside of school. We realized that it was time for TJ to leave. We pulled him out of school at the age of 19, and DFR helped us apply for some individualized funding. And we were able to recruit and hire the right supports for TJ's needs. We began to develop a plan for TJ's day that would be meaningful and fulfilling for him. This wasn't as easy as we thought it would be, but we did see TJ's anxiety decrease, which made us all happy.
After pulling TJ out of school, began to join a few of the family groups that were gathering together at DFR, and this gave us an opportunity to connect with like-minded parents who were on a similar journey. Some families had plenty of experiences to share and had gone through challenges like ours before. We gleaned so much from them. Other families had just started their journey and would come and listen and just ask questions. Still others were like us, having reached a place where the ideas were very hard to come by, and we were just tired. We really come to enjoy these groups. We've been greatly encouraged and always seem to leave with another idea to try, or just hear about a small success story that keeps hope alive. Together we share, learn, and develop the visions that we hold for our children. At the beginning, we were quite isolated. We never really thinking that there were other families going through what we were going through. But guess what? We continued to meet family after family, wanting to discover a better life for their sons and daughters who have unique challenges. And we're definitely not alone. One of the groups that has made a huge difference for TJ and our family was the biomedical group at DFR. This group, we gather once a month to discover alternative approaches, more holistic ways of healing that may be helpful to our loved ones in a variety of ways. We invite some of the experts within our community to come and share with us anything that might be helpful. Over the years, we've had a naturopath come to speak with us about diet. We learn about food sensitivities, vitamins, minerals, foods, anything that would be calming and relaxing for the body. An occupational therapist came to speak about addressing the sensory needs of our kids, and she gave us several suggestions around developing a sensory diet for TJ. A pain management nurse came to speak on how to recognize signs of pain, even for people who are non-speaking, and what alternative options there may be in helping relieve that pain, including medical marijuana. Through this group, we began to explore diet changes, which really had a profound effect on TJ. We discovered that he had some food sensitivities that we weren't aware of that were causing big problems for him. After eliminating certain foods, TJ improved greatly. We developed a sensory diet, putting a swing up in our living room for him, which really helped him to cope better with anxiety. And right now, we're experimenting with the medical marijuana. Getting feedback from other parents on what's working and what's not has really been invaluable to our family. We've discovered many options other than your typical medication route that have been extremely helpful for TJ.
Through DFR, we have attended workshops by Peter Marks on conscious care. These workshops have really helped us not only in understanding our son's anxiety levels and the pain he may be experiencing, but also we've learned awareness-based calming and de-escalation strategies. These workshops were extremely helpful for us as a family and to TJ's whole support team. Another inspiring group we have been attending at DFR is called Imagining Home. This group of families are exploring ways of looking into housing needs of their adult sons and daughters, and this is where we are right now. Since we aren't getting any younger, we are trying to imagine what a home would look like for our son TJ in the future. And we've had many ideas over the years around housing, But we wanted a place where TJ would be comfortable, where he had room to grow and to foster relationships within community, and perhaps even a roommate, and also a place that would sustain him after we are gone. When we came together with others who were also trying to figure this issue of housing out, the stories that were shared there were much like our own. We heard from families who had gone before us, and they shared success stories and experiences that didn't go so well either. We had speakers come in to share on various topics related to housing and real estate. We had families share about how supportive roommates were helpful to them. This group also keeps us up to date with new housing initiatives and ministry updates. Since attending this group, we were able to watch a few real-life stories unfold over the years, which was encouraging for us. Listening to these stories has been wonderful. Hearing how their loved ones were flourishing in their own space, developing their own sense of identity, while establishing new and meaningful interactions within their neighborhoods and community has been so positive for us. We have become less fearful about the future, and now we are more excited than ever to see our own son in his place. What I can tell you is that when we continue to want more for our son TJ. We were never satisfied with the limited opportunities that have been offered in the past at school or the community that were not tailored to TJ's individual and unique needs. DFR has come alongside our family to help us think outside the box. We've been really, truly blessed in finding supportive ideas, and also the connections and friendships that have developed have given us strength to continue on our journey.
TJ's journey continues to be filled with challenges today. We are still on our knees at times. We still have much to figure out, but TJ has come a long, long way. He continues to surprise us as he learns and grows into his own person. And as a result, we are now seeing that smile more and more. This is a video I'm going to leave you with of our son TJ. Over the summer, he had been looking outside at the dark clouds, sitting outside, and he was just waiting for the rain. And he was so excited when it started to rain, and it was warm out, and he was so happy. If you could hear the video, he's got his happy sounds. And
we're having technical issues, but couldn't get it going, but he was quite excited about it.
He'd been in the sprinklers all summer,
Yeah.
and so when the sky opened up and it was so warm outside, he was also happy that I wasn't stopping him, right? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy, Tracy, and Alan. So we've heard now family leadership in action, whether it's coming together and sharing stories, going against the grain, taking a leap, being open to new ideas, mentoring, broadening horizons, reimagining. Family leadership comes in many ways, and it comes in many actions. And it is through these actions that has led to our definition of family leadership. Family leadership arises out of family experience being articulated, heard, validated, and acted upon, locally, within one's community, or on a broader societal level. Sometimes family leadership looks internally and is done for oneself and each other. Very often, family leadership emerges through one family sharing part of or their whole story in conversation with other families who are inspired, encouraged, and shown new ideas. And time again, family leadership arises most powerfully when families, often in partnership with a principled support organization, together figure out what response or collective action would be helpful for making more lasting or societal change for the community as a whole. So we're also humble enough to know that we don't have the answer, all of the answers. We certainly have many ideas, but again, we'd like to hear from you. So together, I think we'll like to work on this as a group, and we'd like to think about what supports family leadership. So we'll just brainstorm as a group. Again, I'm going to ask Alan to come around with the mic. And Janet, if you could record. Sure. So this is giving us about 20 seconds to think. So the question is, what supports family leadership? So in your opinion, what is supportive of family leadership?
Families supporting each other when they're going through situations or advocating. If you have somebody with you, it's invaluable.
Yeah, so having people that are standing alongside you, families, supporting families, absolutely. In what other ways is family leadership supported?
Sometimes it's emotional support to help people have the courage and boldness to be the strong advocates. And they have answers and they have things to say, but that it's, again, that coming alongside and not doing it for them. Having them advocate in their own words, but supporting emotionally and giving them the courage to do it.
Right, so recognizing capacity and the confidence that is already in there, and then, yeah, and supporting that. Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you said, too, not doing for, right? That takes away from leadership. It's being supportive of. From the front.
From an agency perspective, I would say it's creating spaces, creating those opportunities where you are encouraging and enabling family leadership, whether that be a space or whether that be guidance or support. It's creating those opportunities.
Right, so a safe place for families to come together and recognizing that, again, the capacity in families to be able to do that, just being supportive of finding a place to do that. Yeah.
Just by giving them the information of programs and things that are available out there for them.
Right, so information, resources, new ideas, not hoarding things all to ourselves, sharing.
On the side of the support worker, challenging them people to do new things, right? And just kind of like taking the time and putting the extra in to be willing to, for instance, go to places like this, so that they're able to go and able to attend the things, or being open-minded enough to kind of listen to them and explain some things maybe that they're not getting or they need, or whatnot, supporting in that sense.
Right, so thinking about resources that may be available to help families to be together and learn and grow, and then again having the belief in people that these ideas are possible and possibilities can come to fruition.
Outreach. There used to be a time when the Victorian Order of Nurses would go to the homes of parents who had newborn children with disabilities, so that they sort of had a good idea of what they're in for, and to know that supports would be available to them as the time got tough. So looking at it from the youngest level, so that people who do not realize that there are others in the same situation can be helped by reaching out to them, by those who know that there are many others, And at the elderly level, there are seniors who are isolated and are in desperate need of supports and don't know how to get them. But we know they're there. Why don't we reach out to them to help them that way?
Right, so finding the people, and yeah, absolutely. Is there one more that someone wants to share? Okay.
I think organizations need to be more open for change to support their clients and their families as well.
So supportive of, so flexible
Yes.
organizations, definitely, definitely. Thank you. See, when we work together, we come up with a whole host of ideas. So that was great. Really appreciate that. We do, as I said, we do have some ideas, and we would like to share our ideas with you. So I'm going to be calling on first Melissa LaBelle, who's going to share how she helps to support family leadership. And then following Melissa, Janet will be able to speak to, Janet Cleese will speak to Durham Family Resources as a whole and how the organization is supportive of family leadership.
Hi, I'm Melissa, and I'm a family support facilitator here at Durham Family Resources. I have the honor to spend time with families who show leadership through expecting and acting on ordinary, valued opportunities for a good life with their loved ones who have developmental disabilities. As a facilitator, I work hard at supporting families and maintaining a positive vision and living a full protective life as a whole family and being present and involved in their communities. I respect the natural authority of the whole family and see the individual in the context of an engaged and supportive family who truly want to listen to their voice. I work along the side of and support families. I do not manage people. I work with one family at a time. I respect the pace, the ideas, the beliefs, the values, the goals, and the leadership that each family I work with. There is no support model or program that I use as a guideline, only the principles that the organization and the family agreed to hold together. Each family has their own journey and explorations to make. I take the time to get to know the whole family and their personal story. I establish and maintain positive relationships with families that are grounded in a partnership. I assist families in defining what is important, valuable, and typical for them. I encourage and support families to take the lead down the unique path that fits them to all have a good life. Families want their loved ones to have a good, typical lives with opportunities and enjoy life tasting, develop their abilities and passions into valued social roles. They strive for their loved ones to be recognized as contributing citizens that are fundamental to the community vitality. As a facilitator, I support, nurture, and respect the family's natural role in leadership. I recognize leadership in families daily. Families share information, direction, guidance, and influence others in a very positive way. I advocate families who want a good, typical life in their community for their family and for their members. They have the capacity and life experiences, and I have some time to offer. I have support, and I have a few skills that I've learned along the way that I'm willing to share, and some resources that might just help. I do a lot of this by providing networking opportunities, positive role modeling, helping new skills develop, like planning and role development, and one-to-one family meetups. Families become confident in their natural leadership abilities and skills. For a facilitator, it is wonderful to witness and watch a family flourish and show their leadership in their own lives. Families tell me through our work at DFR, they feel supported and acknowledged for the care and the support they provide, and the recognition for their genuine concern of the well-being and the future of their loved ones and their families as a whole. There are so many areas as a facilitator at DFR that I touch upon with all the families I connect with. One of the most important and even powerful things I do is to help families think about and act upon role development. Over time and through trusting conversations, augmented by learning events across DFR, We have conversations that sound like this. Everyone has a purpose for this life, a reason for doing something, something that makes you feel alive and thrive. Everyone has the ability to contribute to their family and to their community. At DFR, we nurture the natural capacity within families and all people. Who does this person, your family member, want to be in their family, their neighborhood, their community, based on their interests, passions, and opportunities that present in their community? We answer this question by bringing people into roles that give people purpose, identity, places to belong, and people to connect with, and relationships. This is the power of role. In this work involves assisting people in expanding their skills, discovering their passions, and finding like-minded people in typical ways. Some roles develop naturally: brother, sister, aunt, uncle, cousin, neighbor. Other roles take shape and evolve over time: baker, bike repair, office administrator, parks event volunteer, artist, photographer, etc. Typical roles carried out in typical ways as a citizen in their community. In the last year, I have supported a woman in developing her passion for creativity and art. It took time to develop trust with the family, open communication, and listen to their concerns about someone new coming into their home. I could see this woman enjoys expressing herself through drawing and coloring. It brings her calmness and centers her. Through much discussion, sourcing, and planning, a wonderful local artist visits her weekly in her family home. They create magnificent art in different mediums, sometimes getting down and dirty with all different forms of art products. This creativity has now expanded to the woman wanting to decorate her room in her style by her choice. She has flourished and become outgoing. She has a new focus and purpose for her art creations. She identifies herself as being an artist, wishes to learn more, and wants to share her talents with other people in her community. We always return to the question, what is typical for a person of this age in this community? We assist in setting high expectations, strategically and intentionally avoiding, dispelling, and counteracting negative stereotypes. Families sharing their journey, wisdom, and achievements, and granting themselves permission to dream big, and to show their strength and courage, leadership, and it creates legacies for stories that inspire other families. I am truly humbled by my position. Thank you.
What I love about that story, it could be so many are like this, where we start to talk with the family about new ways of thinking about things, new ways to see their sons and daughters. And we're not asking people to turn around and change their whole lives, weeks and months at a time, all at once. And what we often do is exactly as Melissa's described, to say, I noticed that your daughter really likes coloring. And, what if someone was able to explore that with her? Not me, I'm not very good at color, but maybe I might know someone. Maybe when that someone is a real artist rather than an art therapist or a support worker who doesn't mind holding a pencil. When it's a real artist, they come in with their joy and love, and then it's two people kind of learning to create together. And families see and notice that, right? And then if the family thinks that's a great 1 hour together, what would 2 hours look like? And if 2 hours look pretty good and it goes to redecorating the bedroom, well, to redecorate your bedroom properly, you'd better go out and look at some stuff and look at some people's rooms. And if that looks pretty good, what else might the artist invite this person out to? So this is just the beginning unfolding of possibility within a person and their life. And it's not that families don't want that to happen. I think so often they don't even know what might happen, what might be possible, and it just is a little bit opening of the door. So in our definition of family leadership can be encouraged, recognized, augmented, and supported by a series of organizational supports and resources, and that's what we kind of turn our heads to in part. There's so much that happens that have nothing to do with us. So Sandy and Nick going down to Florida, that's another Nick, not this Sandy and Nick. I don't want to start any rumors. Sandy and her Nick going down to Florida and imagining how housing and a home for Bobby could be different than what was now. That had little to do with us and everything to do with what they did with all that they had heard. But the pieces that we might do as an organization, I just want to talk for a few minutes through that. So here's a few key ideas that I think are really important. One is, I need the slide to go with that. We just need to understand that our work is based on listening to families well. And somebody in our brainstorm a few moments ago said it's not just listening to the words, but listening fully to people as they're telling us what is happening. We have so many families that are, maybe the ministry decides that we should kind of pay attention to them because they're angry, they're really, really frustrated, and they don't want to work with anybody. And yet when they are listened to, when we realize we're not going to act until we really understand what's in your mind, people can actually begin to say what's not only on their minds, but in their hearts. So listening is key, and listening isn't a one-time act. It happens again and again over time. And secondly, another idea is that people tell us if what we're offering, what we're talking about, and what we're helping to bring about is relevant to them. And they tell us, we say, with their presence. So do they turn up at events? Do they return our phone calls? Do they engage in conversations? Do they bring other people along? And that's what we try to let guide us all of the time. Sometimes we have an idea that just fits one family, and that's fine. But we really try to take the opportunity to see what are the patterns that emerge. So one family is feeling like they need to figure out housing for the future, and then another and another and another, and suddenly we have 30 people for whom this is important. And when we convene a group and many, many people keep coming out, we know we're on the right track. So this directs and forms what we offer. And we actually don't take a whole lot of time guessing what we need to do next. We only need to listen and ask to the families that we're engaged with what would be helpful and who else would like to be on that ride. Who else should we be talking to? So we look for the patterns around those family stories and begin a more collective response that almost always brings other families together. And in some of our ways of working, for example, in our housing, and even more intentionally in our supports for decision-making project, it's kind of looking outside and saying, who else cares and worries and thinks about these same issues in our broader community? So we need to be conscious of, what's the individual family, what's relevant to a group of families, and where the response would be strengthened by policy or legislative change. And then we gather families together to even think about how that could happen. And one of the small supports we do, and this goes back to listening, families gathered together for housing. They thought about what was important. They kind of gleaned it down to 10 things they wanted everyone in positions of power to think about. And we just heard their words, produced it in a lovely document because we have some capacity to do that. The families took it back, said, never mind if it's lovely, it still needs some editing, worked it over. We worked it and gave it back to them. And then they have a document that was theirs that they could go forward and advocate, often without us. And we need also, very importantly, to support enthusiastic families to recognize the deceptions of pretend community that surround them all of the time, and help them recognize them, separate them from the authentic responses that will make a sustained difference in their lives. So this is the work of authentic critical analysis. What's wrong with what I'm seeing and what would be better? That's what we really help families to look at very, very critically. Because so often the other options around are wrapped in lovely language. Lately I've read something about intentional community, which is so different than how we used those words 20 years ago, right? I was in a housing project not long ago where they talked about the diversity of the people living in that housing development. Every single person had a disability, but they had different kinds of disabilities, and now that's the new diversity, right? So we really teach families to peek under the language, to peek under the labeling, and see what really lies there. Because the wonderful thing about families is they are grounded first and foremost, not in the disability sector, but in real community, right? And so that's what we get them to go back to and say, give this a knock, is it authentic, is it real? And remember that not all paths, no matter what you're told, will lead to that good life in community, and some of them are just a falsehood. And then another idea is that we meet families where they are at, and this is our sign of respect for each family, and it's really come clear to us that we have no idea on what is the most relevant, important starting point for each family, but they have very good ideas. And it's really clear that whether it's talking about home, wanting the person to have a greater purpose in their life, or a greater degree of relationships, all of those conversations lead to the same places. Like everyone wants that life of belonging, of fulfillment, of contribution, where you're contributing to someone who is happy to receive that contribution and has something to give back to you. So we've learned it doesn't matter which door, families know where their assets and their resources are best used, and we just start with them there. So that sounds all kind of very, that's really nice. There's some key elements. What does this all really look like? We did a little exercise not too long ago, kind of in preparation of thinking of this workshop. And don't worry, I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I just really want to say, in real life, we hear these things. And this is what we have developed for families as a result. So we can get this to people who are interested, but so it's typical for us to hear, for example, people say, oh, it's really hard to find and good, to keep and find and keep good support people. And so we've really thought about that and said, what is it that we can do? Extra recruitment help. So we hold respiteservices.com, that matching kind of site to find independent support workers. But we enhance it. We add things like, we call it meet and greet, which is like speed dating for finding good supporters, right? You get a bunch of supporters, a bunch of families, and they bring resumes along and they meet each other for 3 minutes and then they snap and go on to the next person. It's a great way to quickly find out if there's any good support around. We do relevant training for team members. We help with lots of communication. Sometimes it's not even the finding, it's the keeping of the supporters that people need and want to get better at. We help families to develop some of those skills. We allow for lots and lots of innovation, and because everything is just one family at a time, we can start and stop things. Families can start and stop things really quickly. Recently, we just heard for about, months that, the LIN supports that come through it used to be CCAC, LIN supports, and families just kept saying they're not working for us. They don't arrive on time. It's different people all the time. They have no idea how to support my son and daughter, or they don't show up at all, and then I have to use my MCSS paid supports or my own energy for that. And so we gathered family stories and we really advocated at the local LIN, and we were part of a larger movement that actually got family managed care into being in March. And so now it's a possibility that families can actually recruit and hire and manage their own supports with LIN funding. So that was a helpful kind of thing. Of course, it's the Ministry of Health, and you think MCCSS is bureaucratic. The Ministry of Health takes the cake. There's a contract, I think, is 40 pages long, and it goes from there. One of the things we found out that we can offer as an organization to be the bookkeeper for families. So they have to do nothing other than hire, guide, and get on with life, and we do all the kind of back office kinds of pieces. So that's how can we be helpful to families. People talked about housing a fair bit, but there's just so much in the housing. So through families telling us what was important, we were able to secure for 11 families very small amounts of support funding, but a small amount means that you can take your first steps into whatever your plan might be. We, in our region, we got those portable housing benefits, so there's kind of movement forward all of the time, and without a single vacancy being opened in the last 3 years, there's been 22 moves or arrangements within the families in our group that have taken their next step in housing. So that's because families realized that they were going to be a part of the solution, and we helped to imagine how we could be creative around the rest. Often we've had to really push back on QAM because families say QAM doesn't fit for us. That's not how we think about life. We're not offering a service. We're developing and guiding support arrangements. And so we've been part of a really big advocacy effort to the ministry to hold QAM at bay. And so far so good, but who knows where things are going. Right. We hear from young families who feel quite isolated from one another, and so we beef up what we're doing around that. So there's kind of two of these. We have, and sometimes things are quite small. We hear from families that they feel that they're just like too stressed to even think about what the next step might be. And our work with the biomedical studies group that Tracy was talking about talked to us about the importance of mindfulness. And so we found a local mindful practitioner who's just magic with families. And she goes into the heart of the most families who tell us they are the most stressed and helps everyone to breathe together. And it's not a magic solution, but it does create a better place from which the family can make their next decisions. And so I think, almost all, if not all of the work of Durham Family Resources is shaped by the input of families. And so I think this is what family leadership is allowed to shape and do when families are given the leeway and the opportunity to have their say, experiment, explore, discover, and then feed back to us what would work for them. All right. Now, we do have time for the couch, and on to the couch. So there is nothing that replaces family-to-family conversation, and we couldn't quite do it as fully as we might, but we thought, why don't we do a little play acting with that? So Sandy, Tracy, and Alan are going to come up and get comfortable on the couch. And we're going to ask them some questions. And we're going to begin with a few questions, but we're going to be very open to your questions. And our image is that that this will become a living room with the rest of you kind of in the living room, and see if we can't have a little bit of a conversation. And so one of the things we said to the families, this can't be very spontaneous if you know all the answers. So we've got them in this situation where we haven't really shared the questions with them. Let me grab mine. Selena, you've got the other mic, and we'll do running around and helping the situation here. So Alan, let's start with you. So can you just talk a little bit about being a part of that housing group and how that, what does that mean for your plans right now for TJ? Where are your thoughts at, and what are your next steps, perhaps some of those going to look like?
Well, we realized early on putting our son's name at 18 on the housing list wasn't too helpful. So now he's 24, but so we're just ordinary people who have ordinary jobs. We have a home at present that really didn't quite fit our son. It was a semi-detached home, lots of space, but just not conducive to a second unit. So we recently we put all our we went out on a limb, really, is what we did, and with some help from the subsidy that Janet was talking about, and we purchased another home. It's a bungalow, so something similar to Sandy's setup, but it'll probably be our retirement home. Right now, it's geared for two units. We're going to renovate the basement to accompany our son TJ, you've seen in the video, and our other son is going to, who is 25, is going to take the main floor, and he's going to pay rent. He has a great job, and hopefully he keeps it. And we're praying that the house will sustain itself until we come to the point where I don't want to work anymore, and we'll sell our other home and end up there. Or if our son, and if he gets married and his wife, want to live there, that's fine. But that's our idea right now. So that's where we're at.
Any other questions for Alan around that? The house and then, so Tracy, one of the things we really haven't heard about a lot is you've been a part of our design committee for the Recognizing Capacity project, which is our supports for decision-making project. And can you just speak about why it was important for you to be a part of that design committee? What you think about TJ's voice and making sure that that's heard?
Well, I think our son is non-speaking, but in reality, he does communicate in many ways to us. It's just recognizing that in him. And we know from bringing a team of support people in, taking the time to get to know him, you begin to understand the ways he communicates, and we are able to hear his voice more clearly. So we think that's important for TJ to have, for people to understand his voice, respect his decisions, and that it is possible to do that with somebody who's non-speaking. So that's really why I got involved with that, just to strengthen even our whole family and the supports that work with him, to recognize his capacity in making decisions. So that was really important for me.
Any other questions, comments, thoughts? Keep on asking. Maybe I'll just ask Sandy a question here. So Sandy, you talked about being part of this family learning series, Making the Most, right? And then you talked about being part of the Imagining Home group, and then now you're part of IBC, which is that smaller incorporated group. And then you've said at the very end of your presentation, you're joining yet another family group to meet on a monthly basis. Tell us what's drawing you to that next family group.
Basically, for me, it was learning from other families and being able to take what we did and share it with other families that weren't sure where they were going, and just to bounce ideas off each other. Because I think the biggest thing that I've learned over the last 28 years is to, never put them in a box, and always be aware that there's always something else out there, and just to kind of learn from everybody around, and just learn of opportunities that I never would have found on my own. So I'm always wanting to learn and just feed off of people, and
Yeah, and that last group is, it'll be a limited group of families who come together, not an open group, is that right?
Correct. I think it's five families that had met before, and then I was fortunate to be invited to join them this year. So
yeah.
My first meeting, I think, is the end of this month.
Okay, well.
Starts, so.
Good luck, and see how that goes, absolutely. Good. All right, and any other general questions, comments? Yep.
I'm struggling how to formulate this question, but I'm interested to hear from the family how you would maybe offer some ideas on this. So I'm thinking of a family that we serve their adult son that really struggle with, and I think a lot of it's about safety, but they really struggle with him having what we think a good life is, and to have some freedom and to try different things. And it's breaking down. Like we still support their son, but they're not talking to us, and it's not a good situation all around. We've tried a lot of different things, and I was really struck by the phrase, "We'll meet them where they're at," that I think you were talking about, the facilitator. And I just wondered, like, from your perspective of, as families, where would you start with someone like that? as a service provider, what advice would you give us?
Take that one, dear.
That's a big question. I think everybody's so individual. And, I think we've actually been in that place a while back. And what DFR actually did to come around us was just to really take a look at him. We kind of looked at why he might be behaving the way he's behaving. We got some other suggestions from other families, from some other professionals, and just that kind of circle of support helped us to really think deeply about what our son needed, what the challenges really were because we weren't able to see clearly. So sometimes I don't think families know what to do. You kind of have to keep figuring it out as you walk through it. It's kind of like a day by day. And the ideas do come, you know. It just seems like you're in a place, sometimes you're stuck, but ideas will come. They do, and they just seem to come right when you need them. And so sometimes it's a waiting game, but really thinking deeply about the person, their likes, their dislikes. We just really had to get to the point of trying to make him comfortable. Stop trying to fix him, to change him, and just trying to listen to him. That was helpful for us.
Oh, sorry. I'm half serious, but do you go and talk to other communities in
we haven't had the opportunity to do that yet.
Yeah. Okay.
But maybe.
But one of the things that we've our facilitator. So you're a facilitator, or for the group, or you interact with the family, the agency. Yeah. So it wasn't, it's, so the facilitator at the time could introduce us to another family, and that's, I think we got introduced to another family who was kind of in this similar situation to us, and talking to other families is making connections, and knowing that family's not alone, right? That's, because we were in that place where, oh my gosh, this is something that,
what happens to us now, yeah.
So that the facilitator through DFR hooked us in with another family that we could talk to and share our experiences.
Do you have anything to add?
And I'm not an expert by any means, but I think as a family member, listening to what other families were doing or knowing they were in the same situation, I think that helped more. So if you have other families that you support, put them maybe in contact with the family that you're having the challenge with and see if they're more open to talking to another family, because there's a bit of a kinship within families that you know exactly what we're going through, or I know what you're going through, and maybe try to bridge it that way.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the struggle that we think about the individual in the context of their family. We understand about the enduring relationship with families. If they're broken, they're so hard to repair, so you want to respect that gratefully. And so the only real option is to kind of have the family be in a place where they all move together, right? So we've all grown up in situations where we're far ahead of our parents in being ready to kind of take bold steps and whatnot, and still, because of the relationships, we might slow down or they might speed up a little bit. So it's kind of honoring that tension, I think. And the other thing, just organizationally, so we have about 3 open-ended groups that are drop-in that people can come by at any time. We really go through the principles before they arrive, so they're not surprised that we're not talking about group homes and day programs, but it's open-ended. And so for families that are new and reluctant and just want to sit at the edge and listen in, it's a great beginning step. And then there are those limited families groups where people have gotten to know one another, and then they can go a lot deeper. But having, for an organization, having an array of those things that you can kind of quickly have someone come to a group, introduce them to a family, and let them go off and work on that relationship is just organizationally what might be done. How are we for time? We're past. Okay, thank you very much for your time, attention, and allowing us to talk about things that matter greatly to us. Thank you. Thank you. Tracy's.